3 years ago, I was thrown out of the country by the person I loved the most. 3 years later, I can finally return home. But I no longer love Ethan. Yet everyone still looks at me with warning eyes. Serena, do you still want to cling to Ethan? Do you still want to ruin Lena and Ethan's relationship? After 3 years abroad, you still haven't learned your lesson. Ethan is still soft-hearted, he shouldn't have been allowed to come back. Someone like her, such a bad seed, should be in prison, should die abroad. I just silently watched them. But later, I heard a piece of news that suddenly shattered me. I mumbled, Daniel. Have you seen my Daniel? Please, don't die. You said you would come back to find me. I went mad for a long time. Finally, no one thinks I'm just putting on an act. Ethan rushed through the crowd and held me tightly. But his hands were trembling. Serena, what's wrong? Who is Daniel? Don't scare me, okay? I returned to the country, and it hadn't even been an hour. I had already received dozens of warning messages. How could I dare to come back? Didn't anyone hit you abroad? You really need to be taught a lesson. How come the plane didn't explode and kill you? I didn't look at the messages. I just took out my laptop, opened my email, and quickly sent a message. I only sent a simple line. I have returned home safely. The email was sent, and the profile picture on the other side was completely black. And it never replied. I stared blankly at the computer. Hearing footsteps, I turned off the computer. The woman with her hair in a high bun was my mother. Serena, why are you looking at Mom so strangely? I was still lost in thought for a moment. Mom wiped her tears and went out. That night, I heard things being thrown in the study. Is she blaming us? She pushed Miss Lena down the stairs, and she was in a coma for 3 months. Don't say anything. It's all in the past. Ethan and Miss Lena are about to get engaged. At this critical moment, nothing should go wrong. My hand holding the cup trembled slightly. I turned around and quietly left. Early in the morning, I sat silently in front of the computer. Halfway down the stairs, I went to get something to eat. My mom was watching TV in the living room. Suddenly, the TV announced something. Breaking news, the Hu family has announced that they will hold the engagement ceremony for Mr. Ethan and Miss Lena in mid-next month. I was stunned. An engagement on the island? I remember a time when I seemed to have been infatuated with Ethan too. I begged for it. The island is so romantic, our engagement, holding it there, wouldn't that be nice? He only had a very indifferent and annoyed expression. Serena, can you stop messing around? I'm working. Seeing that he was unhappy, I immediately sat quietly beside him. All right, I won't say anything, you just focus on your work. Memories flashed by. My mom saw me and was startled. Serena, why are you downstairs? Are you going out? Where are you going? Mom will go with you. She had already instructed someone to get the bag. I was looking for the remote control to turn off the TV screen. Watching her nervous and awkward movements, I understood. She was just scared, and I, like back in the day, was sticking to Ethan like chewing gum. But, Mom, I can't anymore. I won't go out again, I'll just come down to get something to eat. What? I've already taken a bottle of milk, and I turned to go upstairs. When I reached the stairs, Mom was still very surprised. Serena, you. I sniffed. Mom, you can watch TV, I'm going upstairs to work. After the Hu family announced their engagement, some old stories were brought up again. Including the rumors online about how I, in a fit of madness, pushed Lena down the stairs. Half of the netizens congratulated me, while the other half cursed me. Wow, it's finally announced. Congratulations. Hee, may you have 100 years of happiness and may you have children soon. You must be happy. What about Serena? Is she too scared to come out? Must be dying of jealousy. I heard she was forcibly sent abroad. How terrible. She really thought that if she harmed others, Ethan would like her. All her schemes, haha, in the end, she still failed. Bad people never get good rewards. I numbly watched and closed the webpage. But during dinner, I didn't expect my dad to bring Ethan along. I was just going downstairs to have dinner when I saw this scene. I stood at the top of the stairs, my whole body numb. How could he appear at the Sue family? He is Mr. Ethan, and he would know any news immediately. He must have known I was back. No, I could return to the country because he had loosened his grip, and only then did my dad dare to bring me back. My dad asked him to go to the study. He also signaled to my mom to quickly take me away, to avoid causing any trouble. I lowered my head and followed my mom to the living room to take a seat. The door to the study was not closed. Just by turning my head, I could see that tall figure. Dressed in a pure black suit, with neatly styled short hair. He is always the king among men, no one is more handsome or charismatic than him. I turned my head to take a look. It seemed that Dad was looking for something. Ethan didn't even sit down. He didn't drink the tea on the table. He just took what he needed and was about to leave. Serena, help Mom take a look at this bag, how does it look? My mom wanted to divert my attention. I turned back to help my mom check. Mom, it looks pretty good. 5 minutes later, a pair of long legs walked out. My mother stood up, politely trying to keep him. Ethan, why don't you stay for dinner? Of course, we both knew he wouldn't linger at the Sue family home. But the Hua family, no one could afford to offend. Ethan finally turned slightly, giving me the only glance since he entered. That look, what kind of gaze was it? Cold. Indifferent, as if he were looking at a stranger? I sat stiffly on the sofa, not moving. If it were before, I would have probably excitedly gone over and linked my arm with his, calling him Brother Ethan with every breath. But now, I remained quietly, as if the person in front of me was no longer that important. He nodded slightly. No, Auntie, I have things to do. He lifted his foot, withdrawing his gaze from me, and was about to leave with big strides. He took 2 steps. Suddenly, I clenched my fist and spoke up. Wait a minute. The person who had taken 2 steps paused. Stiff for a moment, he turned to the side. My mom had already grabbed me in panic. Serena, what is this? Ethan said he has something to take care of. I felt the pain of her grip on my hand. His gaze also darkened a few degrees. What is it, Miss Serena? Fine. I no longer called him Ethan brother. He too, coldly addressed me as Miss Serena, not Serena, nor my name. I took a deep breath. There's something I need to give you, just a moment. I pulled my hand away and ran upstairs. I entered the password, opened the innermost drawer, and took out a square box. I ran back downstairs. Everyone downstairs looked at me coldly, as if I was about to do something monstrous. But when I took out the deep blue square box, everyone seemed to understand, and my parents' coldness instantly faded away. This was something I once asked Grandma Hua for, but it doesn't suit me, so I returned it to you, letting it return to its rightful owner. It seemed, however, that it was not as he thought. When I handed it over, he was surprised. The dark expression on his face also faded away. Inside the box was an antique bracelet passed down from the older generation of the Hua family. No one ever thought highly of us, but Grandma Hua favored me greatly. When I turned 20, she gave me this bracelet, which symbolizes a granddaughter-in-law. I once thought that I would surely become the young mistress of the Hua family. Much later, I realized that those were unrealistic and fragile dreams. After a long silence, he finally reached out to take it. Ethan left with the bracelet. My mom came over and gently patted my head to comfort me. A week later, I started working at the 3rd hospital in the city. I studied medicine for my undergraduate degree abroad and spent more than 2 years at a medical research institute. However, my parents are still a bit worried. I know they sent someone to follow me. I'm not angry. After all, Ethan and Lena's engagement cannot be disrupted by me. That would harm the Sue family. I really want to tell them that it won't happen. The past Serena has long since died. The current Serena doesn't love Ethan either. I didn't expect that just a few days into my job at the hospital, Lena would actually make an appointment with me. We sat across from each other, and the air was filled with awkwardness. She said she had a bit of a cough, but seeing her very mild symptoms, I understood that she wasn't here to seek treatment, she just came to find me. I prescribed her a little medication. She held the prescription and hadn't left yet. She took off her sunglasses. Serena, you've lost some weight. I don't want to associate with those people from my previous circle anymore. Moreover, Lena, we once both liked the same man. I was utterly defeated. I avoided her topic, my tone was also. The pharmacy is on the first floor, and I need to see the next patient. She still hadn't left, staring at me. You seem to have changed completely. You used to be the most lively among us, how come you are so quiet now? I smiled a little. Miss Lena, are you here to see a doctor, or do you have other intentions? She fell silent. Put on her sunglasses and left. It was just at the moment she pulled the door to leave. I looked at her feet. 3 years ago, she fell down the stairs, injuring her leg severely, and underwent several surgeries. She also bled a lot at that time. Because of this, I took the blame. At that time, it was just the two of us upstairs. I tried to argue that she fell by herself. No one believed me. Ethan picked her up, filled with heartache. Ethan, it wasn't me who pushed. I hurriedly explained, but before I could finish, he kicked me in the stomach. Get lost. That was the first time I was hit. And it was also his first time hitting a girl. Just 2 days later, I received a lawsuit from the Hua family's lawyer. Lena is not a member of the Hua family, Ethan wanted to help her seek justice. I almost ended up in jail. It is said that it was the old man Hua who pleaded for me, which allowed me to leave the country. I instinctively touched my stomach. He had used a lot of force with that kick. Now, on every rainy day, that part of my stomach aches. The next time I saw Ethan was at a bar. It was a gathering for the hospital department. Our private room was right next to Ethan's. The young Dr. L had been drinking and, upon seeing Lena pass by in the hallway, asked for her Facebook. Lena slapped him. At that moment, everyone from both private rooms came out. In the crowd, I immediately spotted Ethan, who was being given way by others. Lena immediately threw herself into his arms. Ethan, I encountered a pervert. Dr. L defended himself. I just wanted her Facebook, I didn't touch you at all, ma'am. And you, why did you hit me? If you don't want to give it, that's fine, but you can't hit people. Ethan, who was at the forefront, had a dark look in his eyes. I clenched my fists. The director finally recognized him and hurriedly stepped forward to grab Dr. L. Shut up, didn't you recognize who he is? This is Mr. Ethan. Immediately apologized to Mrs. Ethan. Dr. L was momentarily jolted awake by the director's reprimand. But he was still too young. He was still trying to defend himself. Mr. Ethan, I don't think I need to apologize. I didn't harm Mrs. Lena, I didn't lay a finger on her, I swear, what I'm saying is absolutely the truth. I tightened my fists. Dr. L was truly out of his mind. He didn't realize that every word he said could cost him dearly. Is that so? So, you mean Lena is framing you? Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. The aura he exuded immediately made people retreat. The entire corridor was frozen, no one dared to move. Still dazed, they were told to apologize. The director scolded Dr. L again and spoke to Ethan in a low voice. Mr. Ethan, just a kid fresh out of school, doesn't know the heights of heaven or depths of the earth. But Dr. L, for some reason, stubbornly refused to apologize. Take us to the private room. Ethan tilted his chin and instructed the person beside him. What are you doing? Let go of me. It hadn't even been a minute inside when muffled groans of bones hitting flesh came from within. along with Dr. L's painful moans. The director panicked, but still couldn't prevent Dr. L's fate. The others could only bury their heads and act like quails. Who would dare offend Ethan, the biggest entrepreneur in the capital? When I joined the job, Dr. L helped me with the paperwork. I felt pity, but looking across, I was powerless. But I didn't expect it. Ethan released Lena, glanced at me, and stepped in front of me. He stared at me intently. "Serena, tell me, what's going on?" For a moment, I didn't understand what he was talking about. But I still believed in Dr. L and wanted to take the opportunity to save him. "Mr. Ethan, I believe what Dr. L said. He has already been slapped once, so there's no need to apologize again, right?" After I finished speaking, I felt a cold sweat on my forehead. Until he curled his lips. I thought he was willing to believe. Unexpectedly, what he said was, "Serena, you were the one who instructed him to harass Lena, right? You still haven't changed, scheming to harm others? Today, if we weren't here, what would that drunk colleague of yours do to Lena? Would he ruin her?" My mind couldn't react for a moment. Not only did he not believe me, he even thought it was me who instigated it. He was too close, his oppressive aura made it hard for me to stand. "Mr. Ethan, you must be joking, I don't have that kind of courage." I barely stood my ground, forcing a smile. Yet he still wouldn't let me go. His piercing gaze made me feel a numbness and chill in my abdomen. "You didn't have that kind of courage. 3 years ago, you dared to push someone down the stairs? 3 years later, you put on a weak facade, really thinking you could fool people." He directly slammed my head against the wall. I couldn't move. My colleagues were also stunned. The director stepped forward, but he snapped, "Get lost." No one dared to step forward again. I looked back at those familiar faces. Just like 3 years ago when I was kicked to the ground by Ethan, they wore the same expression, satisfied and high above me. I gazed at the person in front of me, someone who seemed like they wanted to kill me, who hated me to the core. Suddenly, I felt so tired. I shrugged and smiled. I simply accepted it. "Yes, Mr. Ethan, it was me who instigated it, so don't hit Dr. L anymore, hit me instead, let him go, put me in, kill me." The more I spoke, the more agitated I became. Dr. L's wails grew increasingly painful. I didn't know where my courage came from. I stared directly into his eyes. "Did you hear that? I said it was me who instigated it. Come at me, throw your fists at me." I was clearly so angry, like an enraged little leopard, yet tears kept falling uncontrollably. My provocation tactic didn't work. Dr. L was beaten badly. On the way back, I walked along the riverbank. A car suddenly stopped, and I was pulled into the car, the door slammed shut. There were 3 tall, burly men in the car. I cried for help. But someone knocked me out with a slap. When I woke up, I was in a strange, cold villa. "Where is this? Who are you?" There were people in the room, but no one answered me. I felt for my phone on my body. Thankfully, it was still there. I quickly took it out. But my first instinct was not to call the police, but to send an email to the Black Avatar. I was trembling all over. "Young master, she is using her phone, she won't call the police, right?" I heard someone say, and I nervously looked up. The person who came in was Ethan. I was stunned. But he approached me with a cold expression, and I became even more afraid, quickly sending another email. However, every single one seemed to vanish into thin air. The phone was taken away. "What are you sending?" I turned off the screen. Without a fingerprint, he couldn't unlock my phone. It was then that I, in a panic, questioned him. "Ethan, why did you kidnap me and bring me here?" He only looked at me coldly. He was too tall, and I was trapped on the sofa. I realized my clothes had slipped off my shoulders, and I wasn't sure if it was just my illusion, but I felt his gaze fixated on my exposed shoulder. I quickly pulled my clothes tighter. "So fierce. What are you looking at?" Perhaps this is the first time I've had such a fierce conversation since I started liking him. I'm really scared. Where is this? What does he want to do? But he completely ignored me. He went straight upstairs. I grabbed the phone on the table and was about to run outside. The bodyguard at the door blocked me. I turned around. Ethan was standing in the middle of the stairs, looking at me. Don't bother, this is my territory. You can't leave without my permission. My temples throbbed. What do you want to do? It's late, I want to go home. I told Uncle Sue that I needed to find you, and he agreed. What? My dad knows that I've been taken away by him. Indeed, 3 years ago, when Ethan told me to get out of the country, my dad didn't dare to argue. Even if he took me away to settle scores, my dad could only agree. I felt like I withered in an instant. But what does he want to do? I realized it was at the bar, those words I said. At the bar, the provocation didn't work. No, it's just that the Sue family has a bit of status. He didn't want to teach me a lesson in front of those people. So he brought me to his territory to teach me a lesson. I instantly understood and made sense of it. I simply stood there with righteous indignation. Don't leave, let your people take action. Once they're done, I'll go back, I don't have time to waste here with you. The people in the stairwell seemed to have heard, in disbelief. I simply stepped down. What did you say? Once, I could live or die for this face. But why, now when I look at it, do I only feel it's hypocritical? I just feel that my past self was very foolish. Stop pretending, isn't it just to take revenge for Lena? Go ahead, as long as you don't kill me, I still want to leave. I feel suffocated just being in your place. I don't know which words angered him. Suddenly, he grabbed my neck. Say it again, this is my territory, and you feel suffocated? I tried to pry his hand open, but I couldn't, so I just let him be. But then he let go of my hand. I leaned against the wall, coughing violently. Serena, if you don't want to die, just be quiet. He went upstairs again, leaving me and 2 bodyguards downstairs. I endured until dawn. I searched the first floor but couldn't find a way to escape. In the end, I was cold and hungry. I wrapped myself in a blanket and lay down on a bed on the first floor. In my drowsiness, I was plagued by nightmares. I dreamt of my days abroad, kicking and thrashing. Don't come near me. Go away. I'm out of money, really out of money, just let me go. It hurts so much, Dad, Mom, save me. Why can't I sell my blood anymore? I can hold on. I need the money so badly, doctor. Every time I fell into a nightmare, I could never wake up. Only after all those nightmares had played out, as if I had been punished, could I be released. In my daze, someone seemed to be standing beside me, shouting loudly. What are you waiting for? Hurry and call the doctor. Yes, young master. The nightmare was finally interrupted. I turned over and bent down to fall asleep again. Not long after, it seemed like someone was touching my hand. Then, a cold liquid began to flow down my arm, spreading throughout my body. My uncomfortable body felt a bit better. How is she? Still burning up, after finishing 3 bottles of 4 fluids, her fever should go down. The conversation continues. There's a room next door, you should go rest. Mr. Ethan, may I check Miss Serena? She needs to take off some clothing. The speaker stutters. I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything else, it's still Mr. Ethan, come on. What do you really want to say? This voice sounds a lot like Ethan. Miss Serena seems to have many wounds. In my dream, I felt someone moving my clothes. I instinctively raised my hand to block it. But my whole body was in a soft slumber, and I couldn't stop it. My upper body was stripped bare. I was very angry. Don't touch my clothes. Perhaps the person's movements were very gentle, so I wasn't that scared. I murmured. Help me put it on, or I'll catch a chill and it'll hurt again. Some of the wounds have been slow to heal, even after several attempts. I dreamt. In the warmth. A drop of warm liquid fell onto my chest. In the depths of my dream, I unexpectedly dreamt of Ethan, someone I hadn't dreamed of in many years. And he was crying. In the dark, vast dreamscape, did I see it wrong? I wanted to chase after him, to see a little clearer. But the day had already broken. I opened my eyes, sat up, and saw the needle mark on the back of my hand. I shook my head a bit and immediately got out of bed to walk outside. But my body still felt weak. As I stepped out of the room, I only saw a marble dining table set with fragrant dishes. Hearing footsteps, I turned my head. It was Ethan, dressed in light gray loungewear. I clenched my fist. I can go home now, right? I told Uncle Sue that I would borrow you for about a month. What? He didn't say anything more and walked straight past me to take a seat at the dining table. I kept my eyes cold, trying my best not to be too impulsive. But I have to go to work, I'm going to be late. Immediately, he took out his phone and dialed a number. Is this the dean? This is Serena from the cardiology department, I need to take a month off. I was about to grab the phone and speak to the dean. He had already hung up. Who do you think you are to make decisions for me? Ethan, don't go too far. He only glanced at me. With the life and death of your Sue family business at stake, I have the final say. Is that reason good enough? I took a sudden step back. Ethan went to the company. My phone is also missing. I panicked and searched everywhere for my phone. Miss Serena, are you looking for your phone? Mr. Ethan took it away. I hurried to the landline to call Ethan and get my phone back. But the person on the other end wouldn't answer at all. I was furious. I was under house arrest by Ethan. But there was nothing I could do. Long ago, they had already clipped my wings, and I could no longer fly. Until that day, Ethan didn't go to the company. Lena also came. She should have known I was here. When she arrived, her face looked terrible. She didn't come inside. Lena glanced at me, who was bandaging a stray dog, and almost got into a fight with Ethan. No woman can allow her fiancé to have another woman in his home. But this time Ethan didn't seem to be unconditionally appeasing Lena. His tall figure exuded a hint of indifference. Afterwards, Lena followed Ethan upstairs. Through the villa's glass, I could see them going up the stairs. I didn't delve deeper and continued to tend to the stray dog that was almost bandaged. Half an hour later, I walked into the villa. Lena happened to be coming down the stairs. I went in without avoiding her. Sure enough, she suddenly turned cold and slapped me hard. Bitch. The sound was loud. Standing at the top of the stairs, Ethan happened to witness this scene. I looked up towards the floor above. Then, a louder slap returned the favor. Scared, right? But I want you to suffer, you don't know, do you? I've been sleeping in his bed these days. Sure enough, Lena's eyes were about to burst. She almost lost her balance. She ran away, completely unable to accept the situation. I sneered at the stairs. She deserves it, I really want to kill her. The person upstairs was squinting, eyeing me dangerously. After a few seconds, he didn't come down to settle the score with me. I took some disinfectant and went back out to look for that stray dog. At night, I finally couldn't hold on any longer. Ethan must be a master of psychological warfare, no one can outsmart him. I appeared at the door of the study. He heard the footsteps, let out a faint hum, and turned his head. What's the matter? I sneered. Ethan, don't you want to get married anymore? He put down the documents, seemingly all ears, as if I was about to share some profound wisdom. I'm not a business genius, I really don't understand Ethan's methods. You locked me in here because you're afraid I might ruin your wedding in a week, right? You're really too clever for your own good, you can't trust anyone looking at me, you only feel at ease when I'm right under your nose, don't you? But you're wrong, no woman can tolerate having another woman in her fiancé's house. If this continues, I guarantee you will lose Lena. Are you done? His calm reaction made me feel like every punch was hitting cotton. And really, don't be so full of yourself. It's been 3 years, and you left me abroad for 3 years. Have you ever thought about what my life has been like? Do you really think I was abroad for further studies, reading books? Is it possible that it was a life worse than death, where I called out to the heavens and the earth, but received no response? No matter how you look at it, the old Serena loved Ethan very much, but the current Serena no longer loves Ethan. My words seemed to have deeply angered him. The pen in his hand had actually warped. Veins were bulging on his forehead. Serena, if you don't want to die, just roll back to your room immediately. I took a deep breath. I want to go home. If that doesn't work, I'll go abroad and never come back. Suddenly, he grabbed me. Say that again. I thought I would be choked to death. But in just a few seconds, he let go of me and threw me back into my room. I couldn't get out. I started asking for some books on neurology. Ethan didn't refuse, he had someone bring over hundreds of them. From then on, I stopped arguing with him and spent every day obsessively studying the materials. No one understood why I wanted to read books on brain surgery. Ethan couldn't understand either. He did try to ask me, "Does your head feel uncomfortable?" I ignored him. He also tentatively asked, "Serena, do you have a friend abroad whose head was injured?" I suddenly looked up sharply. What did you say? My head is hurt, what's his name? I suddenly stood up, excitedly grabbing him. Ethan, do you know something? Tell me. Hurry, tell me. But Ethan looked confused. His brows furrowed. What's wrong, Serena? Calm down. From then on, I became increasingly gloomy, even starting to refuse food. In fact, I didn't deliberately refuse to eat. I just felt like I couldn't eat anything, didn't want to eat. Sometimes, I thought that quietly leaving this world might be quite nice. This world is big, and it doesn't really need me. But Ethan wouldn't allow it. After learning that I hadn't eaten for several meals, he actually brought me food, forcefully holding me in his arms, prying my mouth open, and spooning it into my mouth, one spoonful at a time. But I wouldn't swallow. Several times, I almost choked. Cough cough, he got angry. Serena, do you really want to die? I brushed away the remnants at the corner of my mouth and sneered. Yeah, are you afraid I'll die in your house, think it's bad luck? Ethan, the more you're afraid of something, the more I'll do it. You're a devil, when you're unhappy, I'll be happy. He weakly let go of me. I actually saw in his eyes the defeated and strategic Ethan, as if he too felt a deep sense of helplessness. I thought he had finally given up. But I didn't expect it. In the next moment, he took a big mouthful of rice, chewed it up himself, and then transferred it to my mouth. I quickly recoiled. But he had truly lost his mind. He disregarded the biting of my tongue and pushed the rice to my throat. I was forced to swallow. I bent over, clutching my throat. He let go of me. Since you won't eat when I feed you nicely, I don't mind feeding you myself. Before long, he scooped up more rice to feed me again. I dared not argue anymore and had to obediently open my mouth and chew and swallow. It was just a meal, yet we both had red eyes, as if we wanted to devour each other. I guessed correctly. Lena came to cause trouble again. This time, what she saw would be even more painful. Because since the last time he fed me, I no longer dared to defy Ethan. Otherwise, he would surely have a more radical way to force me. In fact, he even forced me to sleep with him. However, there is a galaxy in between. His reason is that whenever there is thunder, I scream and shout, waking him up. When I sleep next to him, I behave much better. This reason is quite absurd. But I couldn't refute it. Because when I tried to argue, he even came to kiss me. He said my words were harsh, and since he told me to shut up, I wouldn't. So he simply blocked my mouth. This time, Lena came and happened to see us lying on the same bed. It was also strange. I actually found myself in Ethan's arms. Every time before, we would each lie at the edge of our own beds, never touching each other. But this time, we actually ended up together. I was quite puzzled. I usually have a fixed sleeping position that never changes. Yet, Ethan seemed very calm about it. When Lena saw us, she indeed went into a frenzy, coming to pull us apart. "What are you two doing?" "Serena, you little bitch. I could kill you. Why can't you just leave me alone and stop competing with me for Ethan? Are you trying to drive me to death?" Lena had grabbed my hair. But soon, Ethan threw her away with such force that she even fell against the wall. She was utterly devastated, her eyes were red. I wanted to speak, to explain. "You misunderstood, we didn't." But when the words were on the tip of my tongue, I fell silent again. It seemed like no one would believe this explanation anyway, and why should I even explain? 3 years ago, she kept saying that I pushed her down the stairs. In the end, I didn't say a word, just looked at her coldly. The commotion didn't last long, and the room fell silent. Ethan calmly took her to the study. They talked for a long time. I could vaguely hear the sounds of her breaking down from inside. I just sat on the bed in a daze. I felt that the noise of the world had nothing to do with me. But I still heard one thing clearly. "No, it's not a deal, I'm serious, Ethan, we are getting engaged in 3 days, I will become your wife." "I do not agree with the Hua family announcing the annulment of the engagement tomorrow, I must marry you. Please, let me marry you." Lena's voice was almost breaking. I heard Ethan's cold, robotic attitude again. "Lena, what do you want to do?" From the very beginning, it was agreed that the so-called engagement news was just to help your Yi family stabilize the stocks, to repay a favor from the past to your Yi family. I rubbed my head. What did I just hear? They are in a contractual relationship, not really engaged. I grasped my mind, feeling very confused. It was inexplicable. I don't know how long it had been, but they stopped talking and were actually standing at my door. Lena looked at me coldly. She suddenly spoke. "Ethan, can't you see? She is no longer the Serena from before, she is now blank-eyed and no longer loves you. As long as she agrees to marry you now, I will immediately withdraw and never disturb you again, okay?" I removed my hand from my head and looked at the two of them in confusion. Ethan seemed a bit at a loss, but he still stood by my side and gently held my hand. "Serena, don't be afraid." I frowned at him. "What are you two talking about?" He brushed aside the messy strands of hair on my face. "From here on, every word I say is true." After tightly holding my hand for a moment, he gently let go, pulling out a red velvet box from his belt. It clicked open. Inside was a 10-carat diamond ring, shining brilliantly. Lena was shocked. "You." Ethan pulled my hand back and gently kissed it. Somehow, I felt his hand trembling. Just as I was about to pull my hand back sharply, Ethan knelt on one knee. "Serena, will you marry me? As long as you agree, the Hua family will be under your command. I will also be at your command. I will love you forever and atone for my sins with the rest of my life." I couldn't understand anything. "Ethan, what are you saying? I don't understand a word. Am I dreaming?" I pinched myself, and it hurt. It was real. I was completely at a loss. "Serena, from now on, I will cherish you 1,000 times over, making you the happiest person in the world. Promise me, okay? I have never liked anyone else, I used to just feel that you were always clinging to me, which annoyed me a bit. My rebellious nature would rise up, wanting to push you away so I could be alone and quiet, but in my world, there has always only been you. I was so foolish. I was absurdly wrong. You are lively and active, but I always thought it would be better if my future wife were a bit quieter. So, I thought I was bothering you and sent you abroad, hoping that through experience, you could cultivate yourself. But I was wrong, you are who you are, and you don't need to change at all. This foolish decision later proved to be disastrous for you." I felt like a villain who had committed unforgivable sins. I blinked in disbelief. what have I just heard? I looked at Ethan, his slender fingers already trembling slightly, and he was completely focused on me. Although he was still wearing yesterday's shirt and trousers, he is a natural model and still looked formal. Instead, it was me, with a messy hairdo, looking utterly disheveled. Those who didn't know would surely think I was very happy, like Cinderella being proposed to. After a long time, I finally opened my mouth. But Ethan, I no longer like you, and I won't marry you. The person kneeling trembled violently upon hearing this. He parted his lips, but his voice was hoarse. Serena, you want to stir things up, right? That's fine, I know you've suffered a lot and even blame me, hate me. I can kneel here all day until you feel a little better. I seemed to hear a huge joke. I looked at him with a cold smile. Ethan, you don't understand, what I mean is, we can never be. Each word is more cruel than the last. You should give up on this hope, even if I kneel until next year, I will never accept it. I was calm and indifferent. The scene I once dreamed of has truly come to pass, yet I feel no joy at all. Time is truly cruel, it has changed a girl and her once greatest dream. You can get up now, stop kneeling, I have already rejected you. Almost simultaneously, his eyes turned red, and his whole body trembled. With tear-filled eyes, he looked at me with a crimson gaze, even trying hard to force a smile. Serena, don't say things in anger. After we get married, I will do everything I can to make it up to you. Even if you want to stab me a few times or take my life, I would accept it, as long as you accept me now, okay? He held my hand tighter, as if he were holding the most precious treasure in the world. I know I was wrong, please give me another chance, okay? But I remained unmoved. Ethan, let's assume everything you said is true, but I no longer love you. I don't want to marry you. I hadn't finished speaking. If you want to get married, go ahead, anyone can do it, as long as it's not me. If it comes down to it, I could marry anyone, as long as that person isn't you. My words ultimately shattered him completely. He could barely kneel. He only held my hand tighter and tighter. I took out the blanket and got out of bed. Ethan, can I leave now? I took a step outside, and he grabbed my wrist again. It was then that I calmly noticed how hot his wrist was, he seemed to have a fever. Don't go, think it over again. Really, I can sacrifice everything to marry you. Will you? Please, Serena. I used to be such a mess, I will never let you down again. From where our hands are clasped, hot liquid drips down. It's not mine. In a scene like this, I can't cry. I have to reiterate. Ethan, can't you understand human speech? I said I don't want to, never want to, do you hear me clearly? I struggle to pull my hand away. He holds on too tightly. I have to turn back, prying apart each of his fingers little by little. As I was leaving, the ring box he held in his palm also fell to the ground with a thud, landing on the soft carpet and making a dull sound. There were 3 of us. I felt numb. Ethan was in tears. Lena was smiling. Ethan knelt there, going mad. Serena, this is your last chance, do you know that? Your family's business has always been connected to the Hua family's dealings. Have you ever thought about why I would help the Su family? Today, you left, and I have no need to help. I was supposed to be part of the family as your father-in-law. You relied on the Su family's company for respect. If the Su family falls, what will your situation be like? When that day comes, I will no longer help you, and I will treat you as a stranger. Have you really thought this through? I clenched my fists, yet my face remained extremely calm. Fine, we will be strangers from now on. Goodbye, Mr. Ethan. Behind me. Ethan, I told you, you won't succeed. Next, we will still get married, right? On the day of the engagement banquet hosted by the Hua family, I went crazy. It was because a piece of overseas news was broadcast in the square. The genius of general medicine, Daniel, has been declared brain dead overseas, and it is said that he left behind only one last message: little darling, don't be afraid, I will always be with you. I left home in the morning to go to the bookstore to choose books on brain treatment. In the square, this news was announced. I could no longer move. On the huge screen, there was also his last appearance, lying on the operating table. I remembered everything. The person I like is named Daniel. The streets of New York. He saved me when I was beaten up by thugs and assaulted. He even wiped my tears. Don't be afraid, from now on, I will protect you. Ever since he appeared, no one has ever told me to go back to my own country. No one has beaten me up for not being able to pay protection money every day. He is very kind. He took me to see a psychologist. He also introduced me to a medical research institute so I could continue my studies. He is really gentle. He said that once I finish my studies, we will travel the world together, tasting the best food in the world. Then, on a romantic beach, he will put a ring on my finger. To keep me forever. I said those scars left on me by those black men are so ugly, so unsightly. But he kissed them over and over, saying they are not ugly, silly, not ugly at all. My husband is just heartbroken. It's just that he came too late and couldn't protect you well. I love her so much. I am studying hard and hope to become as talented as he is. I want to graduate soon and marry him right away. But on that afternoon of September 7th, a big truck came rushing in. He pushed me away and fell asleep forever. My whole body convulsed. I rushed through the crowd standing under the big screen, tears streaming down. I only felt immense pain all over. I couldn't breathe. It felt like I was suffocating, like I was dying from the pain. No, it can't be. It's not true, right? I trembled as I hurriedly opened my phone, remembering that number. I connected the call. But all I heard was a choked sob. I broke down and cried out loud. Then I rushed towards the airport, booking a flight. On the way to the airport, however, I was stopped by Ethan. Serena, what's wrong? Calm down a bit. Ethan, let me go, I need to see the most important person. I kicked and bit at him. I just cried, begging him to let me go immediately. Ethan, he's dead, I want to see him one last time. Do you know? His name is Daniel, he is the best person in the world. I woke up in the hospital, bound tightly. Surrounding me were doctors in white coats, dressed formally. You. I spat out a mouthful of blood directly from my chest. It stained a large area of the white cloth. Who told you to tie me up? Where is this? Is it abroad? Where is Daniel? Hurry and take me to see him. I struggled hard, but no one would loosen my bonds, they all seemed cold and inhuman. Mr. Ethan, Miss Serena's emotions are very unstable, and her condition is quite bad. Only then did I see that Ethan, dressed in a black suit, was also there. He actually held the blood I had coughed up in his trembling hands, and as he looked at the blood swaying in his palms, his eyes turned red. His voice was hoarse. Serena, stop torturing yourself, okay? Your body will completely break down. But I only pushed him a little. I want to see Daniel, I want to find him, he's still alive, right? He must be alive, he promised me that he would marry me in the future. The more I spoke, the more tears flowed. Mixed with the blood at the corner of my mouth. Continuously struggling against the strips that bound me. I was left with endless collapse. Who the hell hypnotized me, that damn bastard, why did he make me forget him? Damn it. I bit Ethan fiercely again, questioning him angrily. Ethan, was it you? You had the hypnotist hypnotize me, making me forget the person I love the most, right? How could you be such a bastard? He's dead. He bled so much at that time, I held his head, wanting so much to put that blood back into his body, but he was still smiling at me. With his last bit of strength, he said, "Don't cry, okay? I'm most afraid of Serena crying." My whole body was convulsing. I could no longer control myself. I remembered everything, but in my mind, there was only the memory of Daniel lying in the operating room after the car accident, just 3 days. Everything else was blank. Because I really wasn't there with him. I was hypnotized and forgot about him. I left the hospital and never thought of him again. I only remembered a very familiar email address, and when I felt sad, I would send emails to that address. I even returned to my home country. I completely forgot about him. I feel so guilty, so sad. My heart hurts so much, I miss him so much. Ethan's hand was covered in blood, with a deep bite mark. The doctors were nervously concerned about him, urging him to disinfect and apply medicine. But I just turned my head and bit my tongue hard. Ethan immediately came to pry my mouth open. "Serena, what are you doing? Let go. I promise you, if you let go, I will take you to see him right away." Upon hearing this, I immediately released my lips. He was anxiously trying to pry my mouth open to check. But I wouldn't let him touch me. "Don't touch me, Ethan, you said you would take me to see him, I want to go now, right away," I said loudly. But then a sharp pain coursed through my body, and I lost consciousness again. When I woke up again, many days had passed. The ward was very quiet, and no one was tying me down anymore. However, I was surprisingly calm and did not run away. I saw the calendar. It had been 10 days since Daniel passed away. If I go now, I won't even be able to see him one last time before he is buried. I really am excessive. The person who loved me the most, a car accident, brain death, I only accompanied him for 3 days and then forgot him. Forgotten abroad. Even after he died, I wouldn't go see him. In this world, can anyone find a girlfriend as cold-hearted as me? It's truly damnable. I have no face to meet him. He must be very sad, right? In life, he treasured me the most. In winter, I was cold, and he would prepare hot water for me, help me soak my feet. In summer, he was afraid I would catch a cold from eating ice pops, so he would warm them up for me first. Alright, I won't go see him. No face. I don't want him to see me, to feel heartbroken. He was so handsome, so warm, talented, responsible, he will definitely meet the best girl in the next life. Unlike me, who looks like a debt collector coming to him for money, he saved me, took care of me. In the end, he even lost his life because he saved me. What am I, a devil of 10 evils? I should have died at the hands of those black people, I shouldn't have gone home with him. If he hadn't met me, he wouldn't have died. He would have lived well. He was so outstanding, everyone said he was a genius doctor in all fields. How can I atone for my sins? Even death cannot repay it. Serena, can I push you out for a walk, okay? Ethan is here again. I ignored him. I just numbly looked at the sparrows outside the window. He quietly sat by my bed, turned his head, and looked at me silently. His expression was so unpleasant. His eye sockets were deep-set and red, he hadn't shaved, he looked really ugly. How could I have thought he was handsome before? I must have been blind. He was silent for a long time. His ashes were brought back to the country and buried in the Redwood Cemetery. Aren't you going to see him? It was so sudden. A tear fell from the corner of my eye. Ethan raised his hand to wipe it away. Don't cry, you still have me. I will always be with you. I turned my head away, filled with disgust. His hand paused in the air for a moment before finally falling weakly. I found out the truth. After you went abroad, it wasn't what we imagined, furthering your studies. On the day the plane landed, the $1 million your family sent you was stolen. You couldn't go to school, you were broke, working day and night, and when you were at your wits' end, you even had to sell your blood. Those people bullied you, beat you, constantly demanding protection money from you. He couldn't continue. He buried his head deeply. In the end, he even covered his face and began to cry. So, he knew how good Daniel was, right? It was Daniel who redeemed me. He is the best person in the world. Even a single finger of Ethan's cannot compare to him. Ethan cried louder and louder. I scoffed. If this scene were captured by the media, it would surely get billions of views. A 28-year-old man, crying like a dog. But I felt nothing. I just thought it sounded really ugly. It was probably half a month later. I still went to see Daniel. Even in black and white, his photo on the tombstone looked handsome. The person who chose the photo really knew how to pick. The corners of his lips were slightly smiling. It seemed he wasn't angry at all that his incompetent girlfriend ran away after his accident. He was very happy to see me. It felt good that Daniel didn't hate me. This way, I could still love him silently, remember him, and reminisce about him. Daniel, is the world down there cold? You always said I was clumsy, but I knitted a scarf, especially for you, so please don't think it's ugly. I took out a warm red scarf from my bag and wrapped it around the tombstone. I secretly kept him company for an entire afternoon. I just felt that sitting next to him made me very happy. See? I told you, he is the best person in the world. He didn't blame me at all. He didn't chase me away. I didn't want to leave either. I just wanted to stay with him like this. I remember clearly that I was sleeping next to Daniel's gravestone. But when I woke up, I was at home. I looked around in confusion. Serena, you're awake. Are you hungry? Mom made some glutinous rice balls. Want to eat a little? I sat up. Mom brought the glutinous rice balls and was about to feed me. I turned my head away. Mom, where's Daniel? I was clearly with him. My mom put down the bowl and wiped her eyes. Old Sue, Serena. Dad wrapped his arms around Mom. But Mom cried even harder. It's all our fault. Why didn't we resist back then? Or I could have gone abroad with Serena, and she wouldn't have to suffer. So what day is it? Living is worse than dying, my precious child, it's too painful. It's my fault, I've become so confused. She said the money was stolen, and I didn't believe her. I scolded her for lying and scheming to come back. Our Serena was originally the best, so lively before, our little treasure. Look at her now, I'm really afraid for her. Mom cried harder and harder. She was a premature baby, and we promised to love and protect her forever. But we ended up hurting her. How much pain must those wounds on her body have caused? That woman Lena is the real deceiver, full of tricks. Old Sue, I will do everything in my power to make her life miserable. Don't worry, that woman actually deceived everyone from the start. Even if the Sue family is brought down, I will make the murderer of our precious daughter pay a price she cannot bear. I took a 3-month leave from the hospital, but I still went to work. My family was worried. But only when I am working do I feel like a normal person. Even after work, I bury myself in the laboratory. I don't care about the outside world at all. It was only after hearing from my parents that I learned Ethan and Lena were not engaged. The initial news of their engagement was related to some agreement, which has now been cancelled. The Yi family is having a hard time, their stocks have still been announced for delisting. Lena's father has also been found guilty of money laundering and taken away. Lena and her mother were preparing to go abroad but were stopped by the police and are currently under house arrest. My parents are still talking. I stopped listening and went upstairs. Ethan, however, seems to have frequent health issues, appearing at our hospital every now and then. But he doesn't come to see me, he sees other doctors. Still, this means we might run into each other at the hospital. I'm really annoyed. Especially when our eyes meet, I even feel full, not wanting to eat lunch anymore. Yet he remains oblivious, staring at me, his gaze lingering. If he weren't wearing a white coat, I would really want to hit someone like that. On the day of the Mid-Autumn Festival, I fell into a deep sleep while I was supposed to be resting. The room was locked from the inside. My parents suddenly became very anxious, found someone to pick the lock, and when they saw I was just sleeping, they breathed a sigh of relief. It was only then that I realized they must have been afraid I would commit suicide. How could that be? This life of mine was given to me by Daniel. Although my medical skills are not as good as his, I can still contribute a little to medicine by staying alive. I will not die. Mainly, a person like me really does not deserve to go down and see him. I worked hard and studied hard, and my days were fulfilling. Even my relationship with Ethan had improved. The reason was that during my dad's health check, he suddenly found out he had liver cancer and needed a liver transplant. But neither my mom nor I were a match. Unexpectedly, Ethan took the initiative to get tested for compatibility. And he matched. I was thinking about whether to ask him if he could donate a liver when he actually reached out to me first. Serena, I'm willing to do whatever it takes, whatever Mr. Sue needs, I'll cut as much as he requires from my liver. After hearing this, I was still in shock. After a 6-hour surgery, the lead surgeon announced that the operation was a success. The liver donated by Ethan saved my father's life. My attitude towards him improved a bit. That day, while I was doing experiments in the lab, I suddenly felt darkness before my eyes and fainted. When I woke up, I was on a large bed. I rubbed my head and got up to go outside. I realized I was in Ethan's house. Hearing sounds from the room next door, I looked over. It was Ethan, along with a middle-aged man I didn't recognize, perhaps a friend of his. He was wearing glasses and had a bit of a doctor vibe. Ethan noticed and smiled at me. "You're awake. You've overworked yourself. Uncle Sue and Aunt Sue are still away on a business trip, and the hospital asked me to take care of you for a bit." I was taken aback. "Thank you." At the same time, snow was drifting outside, a vast expanse of white. I couldn't wait to go downstairs to take a look. I went downstairs. Naturally, I didn't hear the ongoing conversation in the room. Mr. Ethan, Miss Serena's delusion, the person she imagines named Daniel, supports her in continuing to live. This can be considered a good thing. Does she have any other illnesses? Will she be safe forever? No, Mr. Ethan, Miss Serena will be healthy forever, safe forever. The snowflakes are so beautiful. I stand in the snow with my palms open, the sparkling snow falling into my hands. "Do you want to build a snowman?" I turn around to see Ethan, dressed in loungewear, elegant and refined. I didn't answer, but I opened my phone and searched for a picture. I started building on my own. He brought over some snow to help me roll the snowballs. Later, with our combined efforts, we built a lifelike snowman. I took out my phone and snapped a picture, posting it to my social media. When I looked up, I found Ethan smiling gently at me. "Serena, I haven't seen you smile in a long time. You smiled beautifully when you were taking the photo just now." That night, I was very quiet. But not long after, Ethan turned his back and coughed violently. I saw bloodstains on his handkerchief. He quickly tidied up and turned back, as if nothing had happened. Still a gentleman. Until he looked up at the drifting snow. "Serena, we have both been dusted white by the snow." I remained silent. A month ago, I went to the gastroenterology department to see Professor C. By chance, I discovered Ethan's medical records. It was late-stage gastric cancer. But until now, outsiders still do not know. I also gently tilted my head up. I whispered,